All right, let's jump straight into it. Imagine waking up on May 1st, 2026, and the breaking news hitting your screen completely shatters the fragile peace we just started getting used to in the Persian Gulf. Yeah, that brief window of maritime stability? Gone. President Donald Trump categorically rejected the latest Iranian peace proposal, which basically tore up a shaky 2-week ceasefire. This right here is a massive pivot. We are moving from a tense pause straight toward what looks like a full-blown resumption of high-intensity strikes. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking exactly how this regional diplomatic collapse is sending shockwaves, massive, undeniable ripple effects across the entire globe. Here's our roadmap for the breakdown. First, the failed peace proposal. Second, the clash of the blockades. Third, the global economic shock. Fourth, shifting global alliances. Fifth, the hypersonic arms race. And finally, number 6, the strategic outlook. All right, let's look at Section 1, the failed peace proposal, or what we're calling the May 1 rejection. So to really grasp why we're teetering on the edge of escalation today, we got to rewind to what just completely fell apart in Islamabad. The deadlock between Washington and Tehran it's stark. After those huge joint U.S.-Israeli airstrikes back on February 28th, Pakistan actually stepped in and brokered these all-night negotiations. We're talking the highest level engagement since 1979. Now, Iran came to the table with a phased approach. Basically, they offered to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and stop the shipping attacks, but in exchange, the U.S. had to lift its naval blockade and sign a permanent non-aggression pact. And here's the kicker. Iran wanted to kick the can down the road on their nuclear program, leaving those talks for way later. Well, the U.S. administration gave that a hard no. Washington's demands were pretty cut and dry. Immediate zero enrichment, unconditionally reopening the strait, and absolutely no war reparations. From the U.S. perspective, that blockade stays right where it is until a final ironclad deal is done. Now, you might be wondering, why did the U.S. walk away so fast? Well, backed by U.S. intelligence, the administration basically believes Tehran's leadership is, and I quote, fractured and disjointed. So Washington sees this whole phased proposal from Iran as just a bad faith stalling tactic. It's a play to buy time, right? They figure Iran just wants to keep its nuclear capabilities humming along while getting some desperate relief from that crushing economic pressure.
Moving on to Section 2, Clash of the Blockades, Operation Epic Fury versus the Toll Booth.
That diplomatic crash and burn brings us face to face with the incredibly tense physical reality on the water. We're locked in this bizarre state of no war, no peace, driven by two massive, directly opposing naval strategies. On one side, U.S. Central Command is running Operation Epic Fury. Think total economic strangulation. The U.S. Navy has deployed not one, not two, but 3 aircraft carrier strike groups to lock down Iranian ports. To give you an idea of how intense this is, the USS Spruance literally fired a projectile right into the engine room of an Iranian flagship in the Gulf of Oman just to stop it in its tracks. No messing around. But on the flip side, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is executing what's being called the toll booth strategy. They've effectively nationalized the Strait of Hormuz. They're mining sections of the channel, dictating their own maritime rules across 2,000 kilometers of coastline, and, get this, charging ships up to $2 million just for safe passage. The immediate fallout from these dueling blockades? It is absolutely staggering. Commercial traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which remember is a completely vital choke point for the whole world's energy, has plummeted by 70%. We're talking daily transits dropping from an average of about 140 ships, all the way down to, on some days, literally just 3. 3 ships. And fueling this incredibly dangerous standoff is some seriously defiant rhetoric. Iran's unseen supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, had a statement read on state television that really laid it out. He declared that foreigners from thousands of kilometers away have absolutely no place in the Gulf, quote, except at the bottom of its waters. So yeah, that underscores Iran's uncompromising commitment to enforcing their new maritime rules, totally regardless of international law. Which leads perfectly into Section 3, the global economic shock. Oil, insurance, and attrition. Naturally, you cannot just choke off 20% of the world's energy supply without setting off massive consequences. And this military standoff is directly hitting your wallet. Brent crude oil hit a historic peak of $126 per barrel. Guys, this is an energy shock more severe than the infamous crisis the world saw back in the 1970s. And sure, while prices eased up just a tiny bit when news of that peace proposal broke, they are still stubbornly sitting well above $100. This is what's driving that crazy rampant global inflation and the massive sticker shock you're feeling every time you pull up to the gas pump. But it's not just about the supply of the oil itself, it's the sheer cost of moving it. Just look at this massive spike. Before the conflict, shipping insurance war risk premiums hovered around 0.125% of a vessel's value. During the peak of this mess, they surged to over 5%. That is a 4,000% increase. The private insurance market has basically collapsed because trying to make this journey is now completely economically unviable for normal commercial operators. Because of that total collapse in private insurance, we saw an unprecedented geopolitical move. The US government, acting through the Development Finance Corporation, actually had to step in and set up a $40 billion reinsurance facility. The United States has essentially become the global insurer of last resort, underwriting those tankers brave enough to navigate an active war zone, basically just to keep the global economy breathing. So what we're witnessing right now is being called the Great Energy Pivot. And let me tell you, the fallout is incredibly uneven. On one hand, US oil producers and Chinese solar firms are actually raking it in, benefiting from the chaos. But meanwhile, inside Iran, the blockade has displaced over 2 million people from the workforce, kicking off extreme social instability. And for energy-poor nations around the world, the results are just catastrophic. Take India, for example. They literally had to halt new cooking gas connections nationwide because of this brutal supply squeeze. Okay, let's jump to Section 4. Shifting global alliances, public stances versus private actions. This completely uneven fallout is fundamentally rewiring international relations as we know them. And you really have to notice the glaring gap between what US allies are saying in public and what they're pushing for behind closed doors. Publicly, Saudi Arabia is calling for a ceasefire to protect their own infrastructure from Iranian drones. But privately, Crown Prince MBS has reportedly been urging the U.S. to launch a full-on ground invasion to seize Iranian oil fields and completely destroy the hardline government. It's a similar story with Israel. Officially, they supported the 2-week ceasefire. Privately, though, the IDF is on high alert, deeply worried about a premature halt to the war, and they are actively preparing strike plans for the total destruction of Iran's nuclear program. Zooming out globally, the U.S. campaign is actually accelerating the formation of a rival counter-alliance. Back in January, South Africa hosted these naval drills called the Will for Peace. China was the lead organizer. They even deployed Y-20 transports and J-10 sea fighters. And they coordinated with the Russian Navy. But the really big deal here? It featured Iran's first ever full participation. It's a massive direct challenge to U.S. maritime dominance. And Washington did not take that line down. They responded swiftly, slapping South Africa with immediate 25 to 30% retaliatory tariffs just for hosting the exercises. Next up is Section 5, the hypersonic arms race. The Dark Eagle factor. While things like conventional ships and tariffs are what's dominating the headlines, there is a much more terrifying escalation happening out of sight. The absolutely crucial piece of the puzzle here is the technology CENTCOM is requesting, the U.S. Army's Dark Eagle, or long-range hypersonic weapon. Guys, we are talking about a road mobile system that fires a missile capable of traveling anywhere from Mach 5 up to Mach 17. Let that sink in for a second. With a 3,000-kilometer range, it can actually maneuver mid-flight to completely evade current missile defenses. That essentially means the U.S. could strike deeply buried Iranian nuclear facilities or even their mobile launchers directly from regional bases with virtually zero warning. Of course, Iran absolutely knows this is on the table, and they are countering with their own brand of psychological warfare. Iran's Navy commander recently issued a stark warning about a mystery weapon that they plan to place, quote, right next to its adversaries, promising a strong, regret-inducing blow. So if hostilities do resume, it's not going to be your standard airstrikes anymore. Both sides are actively hunting for unanswerable final blow capabilities. And that brings us to our final part, Section 6, the strategic outlook, internal politics, and what's next. So, here is exactly where we stand today. As the diplomatic channels completely freeze up, heavy internal domestic pressures are forcing the hands of leadership in both nations. Just look at the intense turmoil on both sides. In Iran, after strikes hit their leadership, the state basically transitioned into a military dictatorship run by IRGC commander Amma Vahidi. He's operating under a 10-week internet blackout, bracing for a massive wave of citizen protests, yet he is absolutely convinced Iran can still win a long war of attrition. Meanwhile, over in the U.S., the administration just blew right past the May 1st war powers deadline, which has sparked some fierce, very public constitutional disputes in Congress. Add to that the huge pressure of upcoming midterm elections that are being heavily impacted by those record-high gas prices we just talked about. Both leaderships are rapidly hardening their resolve simply to survive domestically. Going forward, three critical variables are going to dictate exactly what happens next. First, that U.S. zero enrichment ultimatum. If Iran refuses to surrender its nuclear material, the air war is pretty much guaranteed to start right back up. Second, the hypersonic factor. If that Dark Eagle system gets deployed, it marks a total paradigm shift in modern warfare, drastically shrinking the window Iran has to retaliate. And third, the blockade itself. If the U.S. decides to hold off on bombing, they're going to double down on total economic isolation, betting that the Iranian regime will just eventually collapse from within. And that leaves us with the ultimate chilling question, one derived directly from a recent CENTCOM briefing to the president. With the peace talks completely dead, the U.S. Navy locking down the ports, and Iran essentially holding the strait hostage, are we looking at a short, incredibly powerful final blow of hypersonic strikes, or has the world just been dragged into a grinding, devastating, forever war? The choices being made in the coming days are going to reshape global security for an entire generation. Thank you so much for joining this explainer. Keep your eyes closely on the Gulf.
An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, so why not invest in this channel? Click like and subscribe for more.